According to documents reviewed by MS Now, the Department of Homeland Security's Chief Investigations Arm this week launched a broader nationwide campaign to investigate and prosecute naturalized citizens who may have improperly voted in past elections before they became citizens. This is a plan ordered by the White House. As part of its investigation, MS Now has also learned that senior DHS and Justice Department appointees have held a series of meetings to discuss sending law enforcement to polling places to, quote, secure elections. Law enforcement agents tell MS Now they worry the administration's true goal is to intimidate voters from showing up in future elections. Two current and former DHS officials told MS Now they have never heard of an initiative like this being run by the department ever before, calling it not normal. Carol Leonnig is a senior investigative reporter for MS Now. She is the author of Injustice: How Politics and Fear Vanquished America's Justice Department. She was the lead reporter on that story about DHS hunting for voters, and she joins me now. Carol, it's good to see you. We have heard so much. I think Walz told me, Newsom told me, Pritzker told me they were worried about federal agents showing up at polls on Election Day. It sounds like now there may actually be a plan in place to have some version of that.
Well said, Jacob. I feel like I've been hearing from sources just like you have for a long time that they're really worried and have been worried about an effort to kind of chill and frighten people away from the polls. And here we have two ways in which that looks like it's coming true. First, the issue of a broad national investigation of open and closed investigations into possible fraudulent voting by naturalized citizens. Let's break that down. When the HSI, which is the investigative arm of DHS, goes about these investigations, what do? They send letters and they conduct interviews with naturalized citizens asking them, when did you vote? When did you register to vote? Let me see your paperwork to determine that you're a naturalized citizen. It doesn't take very long for you to frighten somebody who's basically gotten through a legal asylum process and immigration process about themselves, their family, their status, and all of their friends, and all of their family members, and all of their community. This is viewed as a way to ask a lot of questions, stir up a lot of dust in 50 states, all led by the Department of Homeland Security. And then we'll see if maybe fewer people show up to the polls. The second part, which I'm so glad you focus on, is about armed law enforcement. We are hearing about a series of meetings, and we reported it first today for MS Now, that DHS and DOJ officials have been conducting over the last several weeks to basically plot and plan how to send armed law enforcement to the polls. As you know very well, Jacob, you know this material, it is against federal law to send the military or armed law enforcement within 1,000 feet of the polls in any way that would intimidate voters. This has been one of the biggest fears of Democratic activists and free and fair election advocates. And here we now know it's essentially in the works.
You cite, Carol, in this report, multiple sources who tell you that the driving force behind the sweeping HSI investigations, which, by the way, HSI is normally investigating human trafficking, sex trafficking, other forms of illicit activity that basically in which people are the victims. You say is White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. Talk about what Stephen Miller's role is here. Why does it concern insiders so much?
So what's so interesting about this is it's not typical for the White House Deputy Chief of Staff to be telling the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice what to do about potential violations of law. But Miller is viewed by both the DHS sources I spoke to and DOJ sources as the architect and the driving force between this effort to investigate naturalized citizens, to figure out, did they vote before they were naturalized? Did they register to vote before they were naturalized? Did they make any mistakes that could be claimed to be fraud in their paperwork? And that they, at DHS at least, have been having weekly conference calls with Miller and his staff about doing this. As well, we learned today in our reporting that the DHS has been asked to essentially report back to the White House directly when they decide not to charge some of these individuals who are viewed as suspected fraud voters. Any open or closed cases that they're asked to review. Now, if they choose not to charge someone, they've got to tell the White House, which is, again, unprecedented for any law enforcement activity.
Carol, what are the number of people potentially that we're talking about? Am I right that I read in your reporting it was around 1,000 for starters? And what does that mean in the larger scheme of things? We have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people in this country, tens of millions who are voting, maybe more. This is about, ultimately, it seems, the impact that it'll have on people that are beyond this 1,000 people, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, really smart question. So in the timeline of our reporting, and my colleague Laura Lopez and Vaughn Hilliard were critical to this. Let me just give them a shout out. In this reporting, what we learned was that in the summer of 2025, HSI was given a list of 1,700 potentially or suspected fraudulent voters who were either foreign-born citizens, immigrants in the process of becoming naturalized citizens, 1,700 cases. But that rapidly expanded as of this memo that we reviewed that came out on Friday, in which there are potentially hundreds of thousands of naturalized citizens that will be reviewed. The White House, by the way, I want to emphasize something. When we spoke to White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson, she said, look, it's fair for the administration to be looking for criminals, people who are engaged in fraudulent voting. The problem with that is that all of the research done, including by the pro-Trump Heritage Foundation, have concluded that over the course of a decade, there were only 24 identifiable cases of non-citizen voter fraud. So, expanding to look at further and further and further concentric circles to try to find fraudsters when so far there are so few is raising a lot of hackles with people who want to protect the election and protect voters from being intimidated.
Caroline, incredible reporting as always. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Jacob.